Welcome to Wake Up with Joni, the podcast where embodied consciousness meets relationship, life, leadership, and love through awareness lived, not theorized. So many of us inherit beliefs long before we're old enough to question them. Some become a foundation for our lives, while others quietly limit our ability to experience peace, love, and our own divine nature. Today's conversation invites us to gently examine those inherited stories and ask a simple but profound question. What if awakening isn't about finding a power or God somewhere outside of ourselves, but remembering the divine already within? Today's guest is David Hulse, founder of the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, minister, teacher, healer, and author whose own spiritual journey has taken him from a deeply fundamental Christian upbringing to a broader vision rooted in unconditional love, direct spiritual experience, and conscious evolution. After a profound spiritual awakening transformed not only his beliefs, but his entire understanding of consciousness, David began exploring the common threads that unite ancient wisdom, traditions, modern science, and mystical teachings. His work challenges long-held assumptions while inviting us into a more expansive understanding of healing consciousness and what it truly means to awaken and sustain. David, welcome.
Thank you, Joni. I'm so looking forward to our time together today and see where the conversation takes us.
Yes, this is my favorite. I'm very excited about this conversation. And I would love to begin perhaps with that. What was the impetus, the moment where you woke up to perhaps there's something more than what I was taught in my childhood, in my upbringing?
Joni, I think my experience was what I call an innate experience that just happened within myself from the very beginning of consciousness in this incarnation. And from that, I come to the conclusion that I represent a critical mass of souls who have incarnated this time through a unique portal in which we did not go as deeply into the sleep of the illusion of separation, but remained some level of remembrance of who we are and what our real purpose and journey is. In other words, we're conscious born. And
Yes.
that's the people that I'm reaching out through these podcasts, those that have an ear to hear will go, oh, that's me. I've always had a different rapport with time and space as a child. I sat in the church I was raised in, and I felt something different in my heart than what they were saying out there. We don't learn that. We bring it in with us. So I think these souls are awakening and hearing the call to come forward, whether we call them light workers or whatever we choose to call them, they are the awakened ones. I call them the first of the harvest. I'm not big in farm and all that, but I remember my grandparents' garden that there was always the wheat that came first and then the rest came later. And now we're seeing a people step up and take their place. But they don't need a teacher, they need a guide. We need to help people just navigate through this 4D polarity, intensity of all pathologies emerging upon the body politic, and who's going to be there, not to fix them, but to assist them to the next level of what it means to be human.
It seems like the last half of the 20th century is when a shift really began to form. As you're saying, there is a level of consciousness coming in so that
Yes,
they're reaching out for something that resonates, something that makes sense.
exactly. Well said.
David Hawkins said in 1986 there was a shift to just above negativity. So 78% of humanity is in negativity. And people like you, people who are doing the work and walking and talking and saying, come along, folks, you're raising the vibration. That's aligned with what you're saying as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact magnetic fields are changing, all of this is just happening because of a time. It's interesting that you mentioned 87 because I believe 87, 88, and 89 were transition years. We had transmission that came into the earth. At that time, I had a ministry. I was on the edge of coming over into more metaphysical, whatever, but I received something about a convergence that happened in 87. And it still continues on, that people all over the world were gathering in consciousness. Now, that was not something I had been taught, that kind of language, but something inside of me resonated with that. And I got my staff together and I said, we got to meet at 5:30 in the morning. We're going to join hands. We're going to join this global consciousness. And nothing has been the same since. I allowed myself to enter into that experience of the convergence.
I just had a memory from that time period where there was an actual event.
Mnemonic convergence is what it was called.
Yes, I remember participating in that. And I heard, thank you.
And here we are.
So you talk about in your work, cellular awakening. Can you go into that?
Yes, I'm a spiritual guide for a community here in Charlotte. So I have a regular group that I minister to and teach. And most of the people who come to me are people who's pretty much moved out of traditional Orthodox religion into more what we call new thought or metaphysical kind of levels. Unity, science of mind, that type of level, which is a more inward meditation, go within. But all of a sudden, Jody, in the last year, I've started seeing this demonstration coming from people, sounds coming out of people during the service. I began to experience in the group what I call spirit language or angel language started coming through. They weren't words that we understood, but it was sounds and frequencies that was coming through. People all of a sudden started raising their arms and their hands, like the energy was just lifting them up. And I thought, what is going on here? Because I don't want to go back to my old Pentecostal days when it was all emotional and kind of transcending through that time. This was something different. And something said to me, it's because the within message has done what it's supposed to do. And it doesn't want to stay within, but it wants to come out where we live into the mental, emotional, and cellular level. And that's when I became interested in DNA activation work about that time. And I started working with DNA. And even before Bruce Lipton gave us the validation that DNA is not written in stone, I was already there and realizing that everything is energy, and therefore energy can change its form. And I realized there was something in the DNA that was waking up, that had been laying there asleep. We talk about awakening, Joni, but I don't think it's about human awakening. I think it's about divine awakening. The divine that's waking up in us. But once we understand we're a part of that divine, then we experience the co-awakening with that which is awakening within us.
I think this is a good point to delineate religious from the metaphysical, which to me, the metaphysical or the mystic is about connecting directly to the divine, whereas religious, there's almost like a middleman in between, telling you something, teaching you something.
Religion is assuming we come in, we don't know anything. Spirituality says we come in with a soul, we come in with our own story, our own purposes. And that brings up a lot of things that people just have to work through, such as reincarnation and incarnation, all those kind of things that I think people are kind of grasping for some understanding about what they are, so they don't end up as a new dogma or a new doctrine of new age or whatever. It's got to be now experience, whereas religion was a teaching. The experience was later when you die and go to heaven. Spirituality is it's here and now within me, and I can experience heaven right here on earth at this time. So that's why you're seeing more people, I think, be claiming to be more spiritual than they are religious.
Yes.
The word religion is an interesting word, but it comes from the Latin word religio or religiere, which means to bind to something. Now think about that, because in religion, you bind to a dogma or a doctrine of a denomination. But when, and I'm going to use when I refer to Yeshua, I'm talking about the one they call Jesus. I call him the teacher. But one thing he said, learn, take my burden and learn for my light is burden, and learn it upon you. And I looked up these words. He was using the word yuga, which is an Eastern Hindu word that means to join, as in yoga.
Oh, yes.
Jesus was teaching yoga, and people don't even know it when he says, take my yoke. The word yoke is yuga, which is to join. Now, I want you to feel the difference in bind to and join with. In religion, people are bound to the dogma. In spirituality and metaphysics, we join ourselves to certain levels of consciousness that is coming in. And I just find that a much more softer, more empowering way to look at things, that I want to bind you to my teachings, that I'm the only one that's right and I'm exclusive. And that still is out there even in this realm of consciousness, that everybody's trying to find a following. I'm not looking for a following. I want to make people understand that they're the center of their power, not some guru, priest, minister, or whatever. We've had enough of that for 2,000 years. Something really big is happening right now in the sense of spiritual awakening. I'm here as an interpreter for the teacher that's awakening in you. I tell you, the thing that helped me the most was Gnostic teaching, gnosis, which is the Greek word for direct knowledge.
Yes.
See, that's the way it was for 2 centuries. In the beginning, for 2 centuries, people were seeking personally knowledge directly from source. And then religion looked at it and said, okay, let's call these people a bunch of heretics and let's organize this thing into an institution in the 4th century. And that's where kind of religion, Christianity as a religion, started in that way.
It feels like a distortion of the teachings at that point, as a way of controlling, perhaps, as a way of
Absolutely.
power.
Control. It's all about control. Politics, religion, any 3D system, I call it, has been based under 2 things: control and greed. That's where the God of this world sits on the throne of our brain and blinds us from the innate information that we have forgotten that is within ourselves.
We're very much aligned in it's about empowering people. It's about freedom.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. People tell me all the time, you absolutely minister yourself out of business.
Out of business.
I so empower people that there's nothing in me that's not in you. I just dedicated my life to study it and to make it my life purpose. And maybe you didn't. So we're on different levels of understanding, but we all meet in the collective, in the quantum field, I call it, where everything comes together basically as one. People need to be concerned that when you once leave religion, because religion gives you boundaries and guardrails, I think people need to watch not getting into, I want you to hear me, a cult versus occult. Unfortunately, those words are very close together, but I am not looking for a cult, which means a people that are all joined together by one belief or one person, but occult, which means hidden wisdom.
Ooh.
In that sense, I am occult because I believe that the teachings of even Yeshua in the Bible was coded. I don't think it was ever meant to be taken literally at all. And I think in the great wisdom that he represented, he said, I'm going to hide what I really say in stories and parables and mythology. Now they'll preach the outer literalism of it, but there will be a generation who will come that will open these codes up. And that's where metaphysics truly starts, because it means beyond the symbol.
Wow. I've never, in the 8 years I've been doing this, had that distinction laid forth. So thank you for that. And I love what you said. We want to be put out of business. But so many people to wake up that there is such a harmony that we're just going to float along with them. So a little background, my grandmother was a fundamentalist Christian minister, West Virginia. And that filtered into my mother's thinking. And of course, down to my thinking. And just as you said, it's like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't sit well. I remember going to the church and sitting on the grass and just wanting to be hit by lightning somehow because I knew there was something, but I didn't know how to get there yet. And it took
There
a
you go.
while.
There you go.
So the question is, have you encountered when people wake up to this, is there fear that comes up? Is there grief that comes up in letting go of what was once known and embracing something new? What do you find?
I find that the awakening experience, we're calling it, begins in the root chakra. We use the word chakra because that's a Sanskrit word for wheel, because they spin.
Yes.
But actually, they're energetic databases.
Wow.
It's where we energetically hold our story that we have from the time we were conceived to about 6 or 7 years old is in that first chakra. That is your tribal, everything that you learned. And now we know that even it starts in the womb, that we start filtrating vibrationally the story that is going on, whether we're wanted, not wanted, what's going on with the environment, the family, is all imprinted into that first chakra or energy center. So we have to awaken from that level. You don't awaken into bliss, you awaken into remembering and recognizing what has been suppressed into the shadow part of ourselves. That's why people call it going through that the dark side of the soul, because that's where you have to go first. It's paradoxical. So that's the thing that I think's missing, that people want to bypass, is that when the awakening happens, all of our old pathologies, all of our stuff that is not in aligned with who we truly are as divine beings having this human experience begins to emerge first. So that means when you start waking up, the fear you've suppressed may come up. All that stuff from childhood and tribal issues all come up first, but it comes up, and that's where we need light workers. That's where we need people who can spiritually diagnose us energetically and help us to clear. For me, believe it or not, it happened in 1990 through tuning forks.
Oh.
I was introduced to vibration, that everything was vibration. And I had heard about these frequencies called solfeggio frequencies. And we don't have that in the Western music because we live in 12-tone temperament, boxed in music. So I wanted to get these frequencies. So I got the tuning forks made, and out of that came a company. I just sold it recently that went worldwide, and I started teaching people through using tuning forks how to access the etheric blueprint, which is what drives cellular cells. So anyway, that's a long story in itself, but it was called Soma Energetics. It's still around. I sold it, but I have teachers all over the world and whatever, based just on vibration. So when things start vibrating with awakened consciousness, it awakens not just the best of us, but the stuff that needs to be aligned, or we call healed. I call it aligned with us. I believe that people need to realize that awakening can be changing your sleeping habits. But the ego part of the mind says something's wrong with you. You need your 8 hours of sleep. Maybe your eating habits are changing, what you like, but this is the way I've always eaten. This is what I've always liked. So we go through resisting this change that's trying to retune us to a higher consciousness as a new norm. And the new norm of 5D and so on that's coming in is rebalancing us completely. But the thing is, I'll tell you the best little story I could tell you is that little caterpillar that crawls around on that leaf, eating up its resources until it's at the end. What are we going to do now? And that's when something in its DNA kicked in and says, we're going to the next level of our evolution. You were not born to be the caterpillar. You're born to be that butterfly. And I use that because there's a place in scripture, if I can use it, and I love it. It says, we shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Now, let me break that down for you. First of all, from my Bible background, I read where a great sleep came upon Adam, not some naked man in the garden called Adam. That's ridiculous. We're talking about Adam, which is a bloodline. It means humanity. So something happened to humanity that put it asleep. But Jody, I never found where he woke up. And I thought everything that went on was in his dream state, in his illusion state. God getting mad, driving him out of the garden, putting this curse on women now. Women have to have pain and all that kind of stuff was not in reality, but it was in the dream story that we have all bought into. Now, because Adam continued to incarnate and evolve, maybe as Abraham, maybe as David, so on and so forth. He finally ends up 2,000 years ago as Yeshua, which is called the last Adam, which was Adam awake. Now Adam is out of the sleep and out of the illusion, and Adam is awake and creates a portal for us to incarnate through as awakened human beings.
Is that Jesus?
That's a lot. I know. That's a lot.
Is that Jesus Christ, though?
And that's interesting. Christ is not Jesus's last name.
That I wanted to ask you about, too. There are so many things.
He is the Christ.
Yeah. Christ,
the Son of God, not Jesus. Jesus was the channel. He was the one that physically reached the vibration to match his divine vibration until evolution and creation came together 2,000 years ago. What was evolving from the earth and what was coming down from heaven came together and created a consciousness that we call Christ consciousness.
That's true Christ consciousness. They, in ancient wisdom, as you know, they work with that quite a bit.
Yes.
Because that is the light.
Christ consciousness is a term that means divine mind has reached the human level and is accessible to us.
Nice. Beautiful. You talked about, there are a couple of things. Twice now, as you were speaking, the word harmonics came in, and that has to do with your tuning forks and then an earlier part of the conversation. I don't know if you have anything more on that. And then I'd like to get a few tips. You talked about sleep, you talked about eating well. We talk about these things on this podcast because those are foundational for a human body to be clear enough to channel or connect with that at the highest level possible, that spiritual, that divine. So if I'm eating donuts, me and God aren't having a lot of conversations. So how do you recommend people change their DNA?
First of all, be willing. There's a line in A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you're familiar with A Course in Miracles.
Oh, yeah.
Marianne Williamson, she's the one. But there's a line that's so simple. It says, give me a little willingness and I'll do the rest.
Nice.
I find that just so powerful. If people are out there and they're really surrendering to life, to the universe, to what's going on, even without understanding it, even you don't have to analyze it. I love Einstein's idea of imagine now, analyze later. That's a quote from Einstein. So if people can just allow themselves to be willing and open, and there are techniques to do that. There's wonderful breathing techniques. There's wonderful, we use sound bowls at our center. There's so many ways in which we can open the energy system to what's coming in that we won't have to do it. It will do us.
Nice.
Yeah, think about that. Yeah, it will do us.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I would love to hear your interpretation or take on, it seems like most religions are fear-based. We talked about that a tiny bit, but the difference between a fear-based religion and love-based, so to speak. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course, it goes back to what we said earlier is fear-based is because of the fact we can use fear to control. It's going on right now. It's old. This has been going on for a long time. Like right now, you can just take a few people and make them examples to scare everybody else. See, we're seeing that in the immigration thing and all that. Let's just make an example of people, and then we can control the rest that come along. So this is an old 3D system thing that's been going on for a long time in that way. The first thing that happened with me that made me know something else was coming through other than what I had learned from outside of myself and my brain was the words, nobody in the Bible spoke English. And I thought, then what did they say? I was taught against any Eastern teaching at all of fundamentalism. That's of the devil. And I thought, who do they think the people are in the Bible? They're all Eastern. Everybody was, it's the Eastern culture. They're Eastern. And they spoke Greek. They spoke Aramaic. So I started looking into these meanings of these words in their language, and it was totally different. And I realized that what the meanings were in English from those languages was different, was translated in the Bible. So I started talking about that out loud, and people started listening to me, and I built a complete ministry. People just saying, I've always wondered about that. That can't mean that. It doesn't, because even it says, Jesus said, my words are in the parable. I think that, and another thing that happened to me too, is I picked up the Bible I was raised on, and most of us who were raised in Christianity in the past was raised on one version of the Bible, which was King James. And I remember picking up the Bible, and the first page said King James Version. I said, wait a minute, I'm looking for God's version, not King James Version.
Good point.
Yeah, King James was a mess. He was a character. And he made a Bible because he wanted the king to have the power rather than the Pope.
Oh.
So the whole Bible is about the King of Kings and the King and the King and the King. Sounds a little similar today, but I won't get into that. But this king thing keeps showing up, that people want to be the king. They want to be the king because they want to control that type of situation. So there were certain things that started happening to me that gave me a different trajectory of how I wanted to go on my spiritual path. And that was research and going deeper into things like that, which I've done for over 6 decades in that way. I think this whole thing of organized religion was built upon how can we control the masses, and fear is the best way to do it. And it certainly has worked. But now there's a shift. Now there's enough people, because of podcasts like you and others that I'm on, and that's just showing up, is we're really shifting consciousness from a fear-based to a more love-based idea out there that people are resonating with, many for the first time. And many are getting healing experiences from being traumatized by this fear-based. It was scary to hear about this God that would send me to hell forever and all of that, which made no sense to me, but that's the only thing I was taught.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I remember you need to be baptized, you need to be confirmed, or you're not going to get into heaven. But I don't understand how a loving God could XYZ. I mean, I was questioning that stuff early on. So that brings me to my next question, really, is if they're listening to this podcast, they've already probably stepped into a level of personal freedom, or they wouldn't be listening, or maybe not. Maybe there's somebody who this is the first time. So, how do we, uh, let me ask it this way. What are some common beliefs that get in the way of people connecting to their own spiritual freedom? Common religious based beliefs.
And it goes back to what we've downloaded in our first chakra. Now, we have people on different experiences listening to us. There's people that comes maybe from a very fundamentalist background, Catholic background. Some didn't come from anything, but we've all come from somewhere that started this incarnation story that we're playing out in this lifetime that's basically happening. So what do I want to say about that?
So the question is, what are some common beliefs that you've run into in your ministry where,
Okay,
yeah.
very good. Okay, first thing that somebody's going to ask you that's a fundamentalist, do you know Jesus Christ is your personal savior? That's the first thing they're going to ask. You're going to say yes or no or whatever. And they're going to say, you can't come to God and make it to heaven unless you believe him on him. And they use this scripture, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no man or woman can get to God but through me. So that's made Jesus the only way to go to heaven. But here's the thing, here's the shift. This is the beauty of going from religion to spirituality and from physics to metaphysics, is that he didn't say that. It was said through him, from the I am presence of himself. I am the way. He didn't say he was. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. So power there was in the existence of our divinity as the I am presence, we call it. And if you think about that, we all come from that same place of I am. There could be a meeting going on in your town right now on one side of town, and they're saying, I am an alcoholic. There could be a meeting over here saying, I am a Democrat or I am a Republican. Republican, or I am an atheist. All we heard was the label. But the original point of consciousness is in the I am. If we, for 24 hours, did away with every label and only said to each other, I am, I am, I am, we could heal the planet. We could heal the planet of all the wars, separation, sexism, racism, every kind of ism that we're dealing with is in the labels that we've given each other. That's what I call the ego. The ego is a part of the mind that once said, I'm not you and you're not me. And we bought that and believed it was separation. It didn't happen, but we believed in it. And we built an entire system of thinking upon I'm not you and you're not me. And the ego says, how I'm going to prove that is by the physical body identity.
Yeah. And the
Race,
separation, that
sex, yeah, all of that.
the belief in separation is what causes suffering.
Yes,
On all
exactly.
levels.
And the Buddhists knew that. That's good Buddhist teaching, the difference in our pain and suffering. Suffering is our doing.
Yeah. And it's exciting to do what I do because it's not about converting. It's not about them believing any particular thing. It's about bringing voices to the light and then them choosing what resonates in their soul. Yeah.
I'll tell you another big one before we go on, if you don't mind, is sin.
Yeah.
The sin thing is huge. Sin. And sin as a doctrine called original sin. That was done by the church. The church came up with that whole idea of sin. But the word sin is quite fascinating, and it comes from a Greek word, hameteos, which means missing the mark, which was an archery term. Like today, we would use basketball or football. If you look back at the old movies of Henry VIII and all that, they're all doing archery. Mm-hmm. Because the word that was used for sin is you missed the bullseye. You missed the mark. Now get this, the word mark in the Greek is charagma, which we get the word character. What's our true character? We are divine beings having a human experience. When we miss that mark and think we're other than what we were created to be, that would be what the word sin would be, missing your true nature or character. So when you're in fear, you've missed the mark. When you're in all these things that separate us, you're missing the mark. And that's why we want to come back and find the mark.
Yes. And if we're missing the mark, our behavior could be labeled as sinful.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's not in alignment with our own divinity, our own truth.
That's right.
Beautiful. I would love to get your take on the etheric blueprint, what it is, and how we work with that.
Up to. We have 7 major chakras, we call them. Most people in metaphysics knows that. Starting at the crown, the third eye, the throat, so on and so forth. Each one of those spin out and spiral into a subtle energy body. So the one that comes out of the crown is called catheric. Catheric, an interesting word because kether also takes us to the tree of life of the Kabbalah. It means crown. Even the Bible speaks about someday we'll wear a crown when we go to heaven and all that. It's talking about the kether, which is the highest vibration energy body of who we are. And get this, it holds the divine blueprint of our creation, which is wholeness. People don't realize they're already whole. So that wholeness, that blueprint for wholeness, now has to translate itself by using the spectrum of vibration, by lowering the vibration, and it goes into causal, it goes into astral, mental, emotional, physical. Now, when there's issues in our karmic story that's not in alignment, that has not been balanced, then this perfect blueprint gets misinterpreted on its way down to where we live because we have some emotional issues as it goes through there, mental issues, beliefs that are not in alliance with our truth, all of that kind of stuff ends up. Now, when all of those energy bodies coalesce into the final energy before it becomes physical is called the etheric. So that's the etheric blueprint.
Okay.
Now, that means if the etheric blueprint is not in resonance with the original etheric, in other words, now we're lesser. Now we've got mental issues, we've got physical, we've got karmic issues. All that stuff's in the lower. But here's the thing, as cells divide, which right now, before we get off of this podcast, tens of millions of cells will have died and recreated themselves all the time. So the question is, when a cell dies and the new cell takes its place, what blueprint is it reading? It's reading an inferior blueprint now in the etheric field than what's in the etheric field. Okay?
So there's a dissonance between the etheric and the etheric.
Very much so. You got the astral, you got mental, you got emotional, you got all this stuff you've been gathering through your story that is not in line with your highest nature. And therefore, you end up with an inferior blueprint. So that's what has to be changed. So when I was doing the tuning fork work, I was teaching people how to work in the etheric blueprint and to find things that was not in resonance with the individual and retune it to place. Now, if people say to me, I know it's Deepak Chopra, I think I first hear this, that the liver makes itself every 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, we get a new liver. Every 7 years, you have a different body. If you take your age and divide it by 7, you'll know how many lifetimes you've had in this one. That's how many bodies you've had in this body. So I'm in about my 9th body, I think, the time that my body has made itself differently.
Yeah.
But people would say to me, if my liver makes itself in 6 weeks and I had cancer of the liver, why would I still have cancer of the liver if my liver made itself again? Because you didn't change the blueprint that caused the cancer.
At the etheric level.
Yes, it's in the etheric. Yeah, you've got to change cause to get a different effect. And of course, in Western, we always deal with effect, trying to fix what's broken, trying to make well what's sick and whatever. But all that we're trying to attain is already available in the higher vibration of the etheric body. Mm-hmm. So all we have to do is clear out all of these energy bodies that is misinterpreting our wholeness and saying we are less, and change that. And then the cells will start reading a different blueprint and will raise the vibration. And let me tell you how exciting this can be. At that point, blood will become light. Look it up. Blood is congealed light. It's trapped light.
Energy furnace, yes. Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Our bodies are trapped energy in such a low density, slow frequency. And there's that whole idea of resurrection and Jesus and all of that. Metaphysically, that merely means you can raise your vibratory frequency of the cells of your body by changing the blueprint that is constantly making it. So that's where my passion and work was for 25 years, was getting people. And now we know, get this, that a disease already exists 6 to 9 months in the etheric body before it shows up in the physical.
I had heard that loss, grief, trauma shows up anywhere up to 5 years after the event, and that's why.
It can. It certainly can.
Like, yes. Somebody loses their person, and 5 years later, they have a diagnosis of cancer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So doing the work along the way will sort of head that off.
Yeah.
Which is maybe
the most challenging thing of the work I did was it was very much preventive. See, we wait till we get the diagnosis, then we get serious. Then we change our diet. Then we start doing all this stuff. But if you can find people who can energetically diagnose you, they can find things that are coming through. Now, some things are coming through ancestral. There's many things, but we can take care of that before they ever show up at the cellular level if we take care of what's causing it in the energy etheric body.
Nice. This ties into a quote that you said, nervous breakdowns is an underrated transformational tool. Yeah.
Yes, I do
Can you
believe
pull a
that.
thread on that?
I think people do sometimes think they're losing their mind when they start waking up to spirituality. And I'm saying, people come to me and say, "Oh, pray for me. I think I'm losing my mind." And I go, "Praise the Lord, because he who loses his mind shall find it." That's a scripture. He who loses his soul shall find it. And what that means is you're losing your old egoic pseudo self part of your mind, that part that has its origin outside. What you learned from your religion as a child, what you learned from your culture, what you learned from your race, all of that stuff that is put on us, and they tell us who we are. In other words, they make us in their likeness and image. Yeah, I think that's an important thing for people to understand, the difference in the pseudo self and the authentic self.
And people think perhaps they should be or look or do a certain thing, way, whatever. And if they're having what they're calling a nervous breakdown, or I call them speed bumps in the road, they make themselves wrong for it, as opposed to going, yay, this means there's something coming. There's something here for me to see, and lean into it. And so the more resistance they have, the bigger the gift of power.
This is why I think you see people who are seriously committed on the path of transmutation, transition, whatever you want to call it, is narrower, because people have to be willing to let go of a lot of things that they've adapted to that is familiar to them. We love familiarity. We're entering into uncharted territory right now, and it takes a real spiritual faith, I'm going to call it, to step out into that. But here's the thing, I'm a great believer in this quantum idea that chaos precedes transformation.
Yes.
Again, go back to my little caterpillar guy. Can you imagine what's happening to me? I'm used to being this caterpillar. I thought I was going to be this for the rest of my life. And all of a sudden, something else is happening. And it's breaking down every molecule in my body into what science calls goo. It goes into goo. So your life may seem like it's breaking down into goo, but at that moment, there's an aspect of our epigenetic DNA, our divine DNA, and that's what I call DNA, divine nature activated DNA, divine nature activated. As it begins to awaken and show up in us, then we begin to see a new blueprint show up for the next level of our bioconscious evolution, I call it. I know that physicists in the quantum field discovered the fact that they were looking for lithium atoms to become hydrogen atoms and all of that. And they were realizing they were all made out of the same thing. They wasn't a separate hydrogen atom from lithium or whatever. They were all the same thing, but different patterns. So for one of them to become the other had to break down. So they started noticing that in the old, there was instability, molecules. And out of that instability of all those molecules and chaos, one molecule came over here and divided itself. I'm sure it took a deep breath and just sat there. And then another joined it. And when the two molecules came together, they created something greater than the sum of them. And there became the law of attraction that two drew in four, 16, until it reached critical mass. When it did, it leaped to the next level to become the next thing in the evolutionary story. This is what I think is happening to us. I think the very same thing is we're going through the breakdown of 3D systems because of the breakthrough of 5D and other higher states of dimensions and consciousness. So we're going through the breakdown. When I started this, Jody, in meditation, I was asked this question: do you want to work with what's breaking through or breaking down? And somewhere out of my being, I said, I'm going to work with what's breaking through.
Yes. Yes. So what we focus on grows. What we focus on.
Give energy to. Yeah.
Yes, we give energy to. So intention is huge. And you
It's
essentially took me right to the next question, which was about the Condor's view of the collective. Humanity is on the verge of, as a planet. Now we can go back to 78% is in negativity. They're not having these conversations with themselves or anyone else. But what was also fascinating, I was reading The Eye of the Eye the other day, interesting that you talked about I am. And it talked about one person whose frequency is above the negativity at 300 can counterbalance
Yes.
75,000 people. So if
Wow.
each of us do our part in healing ourselves and raising our consciousness, it will help counterbalance the people who don't have access maybe to this new information or this old information. What do you think?
I think that's a great point. I think it's what it boils down to is we're dealing with quality and not quantity. We used to think our success, like a podcast or something, we think it's getting more and more views and whatever. No, it's what views you get that's important.
Mm,
Yeah, you want
yeah.
the quality, you want the depth. And we don't need great numbers of people. We just need enough. See, when enough of those molecules gathered together and created that pod, they call it, the shift happened for all of them. They all leaped up into the next norm. So, yes, I think that's a very good point that you're making right there.
Yeah, it does it me. Because as a person who's sitting in front of a camera, and then I mean, I enjoy the process. Oh my gosh, I love these conversations. I feel so blessed and honored. And then the editing and all the things, that's all. And there's one person in a closet somewhere listening to this. I don't know. I have no
No,
clue.
we don't.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go on faith that it's helping someone somewhere. I feel very blessed again to have these conversations. And I would love for you to invite the listeners. What's one thing that maybe they could remember that would shift or change or bring peace to them?
Remember what you're already seeking that you believe you don't have already exists in the higher states of your consciousness. Let faith take you there. I'm not talking about religious blind belief. I'm talking about innate faith that knows how to take us back to what only we have forgotten about ourselves. And I think be open, do more listening than talking, change your prayer to listening than talking to some deity or some God, because it is, I'm going to use a scripture, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the things of the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said the kingdom is within you. So, yes, listen to podcasts, read books to confirm, but don't let them be your source. Let them only confirm what's already trying to emerge out of your spirit into your consciousness.
Beautiful. I have one more question for you,
Okay.
but where can they find more of your teachings or offerings? Where can they find you?
Sure. You can just go to David Hulse, that's HULSE.com, and that'll get you on the academy. There's some things on there that are free. I've tried to take my path of 60 years and start out with Bible 101, like hell and all that kind of stuff. So if we got listeners that are really struggling, I don't
Mm,
believe that, but I can't talk to my family about it because I don't know enough about it. I try to help break down all those fear-based dogma and doctrines. And there's all kinds of different levels because I try to reach babes and adolescents and co-creative adults along the path. So you can do that. If you're interested in what I do weekly in my sermons and messages and teachings, is on Light Within charlotte.org. And you can get tons of stuff that I do on there.
fabulous. So you ready for the last question?
Sure.
Okay. I ask all my guests this question, and it may overlap with your last answer, which was really beautiful. How do you recommend that our listeners go out and live their most alive lives?
By being true to themselves, by, again, like I said, it's in the openness to receive. I think it's so available to us right now if we would just say yes to the universe. I mean, a deep gut soul yes. I think it'll take care of itself. I think we work way too hard at all of this. I don't think we have to. I think it is so willing to show up at this time that the portals are open and the dimensions are available to us, that all we have to do is just be willing for
Mm,
meditate, contemplate, and stay open.
thank you. Thank you for being here. This level of conversation, I just find it fascinating. And I
Thank
really appreciate your work and the light that you're bringing into the world. So
thank you for giving us a platform to let our voice be heard out there.
my pleasure. If this conversation stirred something in you, a memory, a longing, a deeper truth about who you are becoming, I invite you to stay with that. Stay with the awareness and explore what it means for you. And if you'd like support in the in between times, my book, Stop, Look, Choose Your Journey to Peace and Freedom, is a journaling guide for learning how to pause, awaken, and consciously choose your life. Or if you're ready for coaching, visit wakeupwithjoni.com. Now, my favorite part, beautiful humans. It's your turn to go out and live your most alive lives.